Hello. In this tutorial, I'm going to build a Flutter app that uses a network connection to connect to a server on the internet. And that server will return a URL to an image, and then the app will display the image. Specifically, I found a server that provides a random image of a dog if you send it a GET request. And it will send you back the URL, and then you can use that URL again to go back out and request that image. This is often done on websites when you make something called an XMLHttp request, also known as an AJAX request. Tonight we're going to do it in the confines of a Flutter app, and I'm actually going to use a few tutorials that are already that have already been put together by the Flutter team. There's one tutorial that shows you exactly how to make a network request to get data back, and there's kind of a separate tutorial that shows you how to display an image very easily once you have a URL. I'm going to kind of combine those two things, put them together, and show you how to make a working app out of this. So let me take you to the Flutter documentation first, and I'll show you where I got the idea. So in the documentation, there's a particular page you can go to called the Cookbook, and at the Cookbook page you have a collection of sort of pre-finished or completely finished apps that will do various things, and there's some really cool stuff here. In particular, what grabbed me when I was first looking at it was under the images section here. There's a short tutorial that shows you how to display images from the internet. I'm just going to click on that for a minute. Actually, I have it open here already. This is it. It's a exceedingly simple bit of code. You can look through it at your leisure. Again, you know where to find it. And all it does is it makes a network request, and the image widget is obviously very abstracted, so you don't have to get involved with what's going on behind the scenes, but it does make a request to get this resource. And then it displays it in the body, as you can see. It's almost as if we're writing HTML at this point, and we have a sort of like an image HTML element, and we're going to put a picture in it. It's almost that simple. And what's really nice about this little interactive example here is you can actually see the app running on the right-hand side. Some of these Cookbook apps actually can do this. You can run them right here. I'm going to run it just so you can see really quickly, and it will pull up an image. All right, and if I were to change this URL to something else, it obviously would pull a different picture. I found that if I break the URL intentionally, there's really no error checking going on behind the scenes here. I don't get any kind of alternate text or anything like that. And I haven't investigated this image object very carefully, but I'm sure if you went and looked at the documentation, the class documentation for this widget, you'd find that there probably is a lot more that you can do with it, including handling cases when there isn't an image at the URL that you're going to. All right, so we're going to need this. This is one aspect of the app that I'm going to build, and I'm going to take this code literally and kind of shamelessly just copy it and put it into my app. Actually, all I really need is this bit right down here. Okay. And that's great, so that's what we'll do. But the problem is I want to be a little more inventive with this. I don't want to have a static URL that I just go and visit every time. Instead, what I want to do is I want to find a service that I can first ask it for a random URL, and then it will give me the URL. And then at that point in time, I can go back, make a second request, and get the picture. And I found a server that functions that way. There are many out there. This one is called the Dog API, and it's very simple. It works like this. You send it a request to this URL, and it will send you back the following bit of JSON. And the body of the JSON always has two keys in it, message and status, and the first thing, the message, is what you're really interested in. That's got the URL that you want, and then you can go follow that URL in a separate request and get the image data to display it. All right, so you can try it out and just kind of click here, and you get a couple of different pictures over here on the right hand side. So we're going to build the Flutter app that basically does this. So that's one part of the app that we need. Now the other part of it is obviously the process of going to the server in the first place, making the initial request, getting back this JSON, and then parsing it, going into it and finding what we need, targeting that message key, getting that value, and then doing something with it. All right, so there's that as well. So the Flutter team has put together another great little cookbook example of that. Coming back to here and scrolling around a bit, you can see under the networking section, there's an entry for fetch data from the internet. And that's right here. I've got it open already. And there's a couple of things that we have to do. It involves, first off, including a new dependency in our pubspec.yaml file. And I'm going to show you how to do all of this. Okay, that's just one simple line that you have to add. And then it goes through a nice series of, or a nice explanation, really, of what exactly this bit of code is doing. And the basic idea behind it, and I'll let you read this whenever you want to, but the basic idea behind it is that what this does is it attempts to create a class that sort of models the JSON information and sort of maps on top of it. In other words, if you have some JSON, and you're going to see a working example in a minute here, if you have some JSON with keys such as user ID, ID, and title, you can see that's sort of this stuff that I have right here, then what we're going to do in Flutter is essentially make a class which has properties or instance variables or attributes, whatever you want to call them, that correspond to those particular keys. And then we're going to write some code that will map this JSON string data structure directly to this class. And then we can use nicer syntax. We can just kind of access the class from within the Flutter app. All right, and this will be more clear when you see the code. I'm not going to go through it in all detail because it's here for you to see. What they're doing in this particular example is they're using a free API that's on the internet known as the JSON placeholder API. And this is just a little tool that's out there for people who need to practice and want to kind of get a little app running, web developers and such. And they just need some server that they can just get free JSON from, and they don't want to be burdened by having to worry about signing up for an API key or having problems with CORS, otherwise known as cross-origin errors or things like that. It's just kind of a free thing that's out there, and you can get all sorts of different types of information from it, and you can look at it and understand what information it has to offer you. So it's really just a playground or a testing ground for people that want to do AJAX type of requests. And so what the Flutter example does is it attempts to grab an album from that API. Musical albums are one of the many things that are hosted there. And it displays the title of that in the app itself. And that's what all this code does. And what's really great about it is that there's a full working example of it down here at the bottom of the page. And I'm going to kind of do something a little interesting with this. I'm going to, again, take it, copy it, put it into my own app, and then first I'll run it, I'll show you how it works, and then I'm going to go through it bit by bit and make changes to it so that it doesn't pull an album anymore from this little placeholder API, but instead it's going to go and get a URL for a dog picture, and then I'm going to change it further so it actually follows that URL to go get the image data and display the image on the page. All right, and I think that's how this tutorial will work, rather than trying to go through and explaining line by line what everything here does, because I think it's pretty self-explanatory if you were to visit the page yourself and read through it. It's pretty well documented. All right, so let me go ahead and copy all that. All right, and I'm just going to get this app working in my own environment first, fetching an album from the internet. Okay. And let's see, I don't even really have a file I do have a file to put it in right here. So as you can see in my project, this is a project from the past. If you watched a previous video tutorial, you'll know that I was playing with a grid view widget, and that's what I have right here. All right, and this app, as it's currently configured, is made to work with that specific Dart file. And I explained in that tutorial how it is that you can go about changing the names of these Dart files here in this lib folder and still have your app built. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to work with this file instead, image_XMLHttp.dart. I'm going to paste my code into here. All right. So that's my cookbook app right from the Google Flutter team. And then I'm going to have to go make a few changes. And if you saw the last video tutorial, you know how this goes. So I'm going to do it very quickly. I'm going to change a couple of files so that they now utilize this particular Dart file over here as the one for building the app. And they're going to kind of forget about gridview.dart because we don't care about it anymore. We're just going to kind of orphan it and just let it sit here. So the first thing I'm going to do is visit my launch.json file, which you can see I already have open. And in here, I'm going to take that grid view and I'm just going to change it to image underscore XMLHttp.dart. All right, so that's one change I have to make. And then I'm going to come over here to my widget test.dart. And I'm going to, right in this line right here, line 11, I'm going to change from grid view again to image underscore XMLHttp .dart underscore, just like that. And that will, at this point, fix everything so that the app knows how to build itself. Okay, now I've still got a problem. I have to go back and put in a dependency to make this work, but those two files have been changed. If you look back at the Google documentation on this network example, they tell you, they're very clear up at the top. They explain, well, the very first thing that you have to do is add a dependency to your pubspec.yaml file. And the dependency I want to add is HTTP. That's the name of it. Right, which allows me, obviously, to make HTTP requests from Flutter. So I'm going to go over here, visit my pubspec.yaml file, and right here in the dependency section, I'm going to put a new line. Important to put a backspace so you're in line with the Flutter dependency, and then I'm going to paste that in. Okay, this would not work. Right, that throws a syntax error. You have to be back like that. YAML files are something probably a little different than you're used to. Indentation matters a lot in this file. The indentation is actually part of the syntax itself. And you can see there's no commas or anything separating these things, these different dependencies. So the indentation is everything. So there it is, HTTP. Now this little latest version bit there is not meant to say actually latest version. We actually have to go get a version number and put it there. So let's go see what the versioning is on this thing. I think I have it open somewhere. Let's see, we could probably just visit it right there. Here it is. All right, so it looks like we're here on this version right here. I'm just going to take that and paste that right in and hope for the best. I know there's a lot of discussion about what exactly does the caret mean. And it's a way of specifying certain versions, basically not just any version, but when you say something such as caret 1.2 or 1.2, what you're really saying is that you will accept any version from 1.2 and newer up to and not including 2.0. Right, because when we get to new major versions of libraries and such, things may break. So small version upgrades are okay, but a full update to a whole new version I don't want. So saying something such as this, caret 1.2 for your versioning in a YAML file is really the same thing as saying I want 1.2, I want my version to be 1.2, and I want to be, and this is not proper syntax, but just to give you an example. So I want my version to be greater than or equal to 1.2 and less than 2.0. Notice it's not inclusive. And what this will do, this bit here, is it will automatically take the latest version that's less than 2.0. So if there's a 1.9 out, it'll take that, but it will not take 2.0. All right, so if you're wondering what that little caret means, otherwise you can disregard it for the time being. It's not going to make any difference if you truly understand at this time what that does. All right, so that's saved, and you can see some red that was here now disappears. Just by saving it, it automatically goes, updates the dependencies, and that library is now, quote unquote, installed into my project. All right, with that there, and I'm not seeing anything here, no problems. I'll go back to my Dart file right here. This should work, and this is the example I lifted right from the site. This is going to go get an album, and just write the name of it across the screen. Here, let's try it. So I'll run it. I do have the emulator open somewhere here. There it is. Right, and there it is. There's the name of some album from, I don't know it, but all right, there it is. And if I were to change this to some other number, and this is all part of the API spec for the JSON placeholder, it should give me a different album. And there you go. It does. Again, I have no idea what and where these albums are from. All right. So it works. And there's a lot of interesting code in here involved with making an asynchronous request to an outside server and waiting for the data to come back, and then making sure that there is data before you try to access things that might be null. And so there's some error handling, there's some asynchronous stuff going on. There's a class known as a future, which is used. And again, to understand that right now, I don't know if it's super important, but you could certainly go and look at the documentation. It's not a difficult thing to understand what a future is. I think it's actually, in terms of different languages and environments, I think they've done a really good job in just naming it future. Lots of programming environments have these types of things, these asynchronous promises and such, things that are waiting for other events to occur. And then if they do occur, they return something at that time. And Flutter has future for handling that type of thing. And I think that's enough for now. I'm kind of more interested in giving you a working example here. So there's our app. Let's go about changing it to make it work for dogs. All right, so I'm going to come back and get back to the dog API, take a quick look at it, and just kind of refresh our memory on exactly what it does. So I send a request to this URL, and it gives me back this JSON. And knowing that, I should be prepared to receive encode for these two keys, message and status, which is going to be different than the album information that I get back in the stock Flutter app. Okay. So first thing is I'm just going to go ahead and copy this URL. Okay, I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to paste that right into there like that. Okay, great. Now I'm going to start the process of really kind of changing this app significantly so that I can actually go and get the dog information. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I don't have to make all these changes because I can technically still call this an album, but I think it's more appropriate if I change it to dog. Okay, so let's start up at the top here, below my HTTP import statement, and let's go dog. That's the first change I'm going to make, and let's change the function to fetch dog. I think that's a little bit better. All right, I've got this URL that we're awaiting a response from that GET request to that URL. I've got some code here that's basically just saying if the status code of the response is 200, then we can proceed, and if it's not, then we have to throw an exception because something else happened. This is standard boilerplate code for anything done on the internet. You'd be doing the same thing if you were building a web application in JavaScript. You'd be looking at these 200 success codes to determine whether or not the server responded with, an OK response. All right, so this is not really Flutter specific, but it's necessary. All right, then now down here we have our class album, which used to be an album, but now again, of course, we're going to change that to class dog. Okay, and here we have these properties within the class, because albums had something called a user ID, an ID, and a title, but those don't pertain to us anymore. We're going to actually get rid of the last one because we don't need three things. We only need two things. Right? If you remember, those two things were message and status. That's those are the keys of the JSON. So those are the properties we're going to prepare in the dog class. It's not going to be an int, however. It's going to be a string. So string message, and this one's going to be string status. Oops, capital. All right, and those are prefaced with keyword final, which essentially just means they're not going to change their values. Once they get assigned once, that's it. They're fixed. Now, if in a more complex app where, say, we had a button that we clicked every time, and each time we clicked it, we would go and get a new dog, URL and show a new image, we might contemplate whether or not those should be final or not. However, in that instance, we might just decide to make a whole new dog instance anyway, in which case these things could be final. And final is just really saying that, they don't change. Whatever they're assigned, when they're assigned it, they just stay put with that value. So if you don't plan on changing the properties within inside your dog class, then it's best practice to just declare things final. If later on you need to load another picture, then you have to make a decision. Are you going to use the same dog object and just kind of reassign these properties, in which case these can't be final? Or are you going to make a whole new dog instance, in which case they can be final because it's a new object? All right, so I'm just going to stay with it the way that it is. Here we're going to overwrite, or change the name of the constructor rather, to dog. And then we're going to rewrite the arguments here. They're passed, or the parameters. So this is going to be called this.message. And then we're going to have this dot, well, I think it was status. Right? Yeah, it's right there. Okay, and then we don't have that one anymore. And this is just a quick way, remember, inside of Dart constructors, of assigning the arguments that get passed to the constructor directly to these properties right here. Instead of having to put a body inside this constructor and kind of on each line make sure that we assign message and status to some argument that gets passed in, you just kind of do this right here, right in the parameter list, and it just goes automatically. It's really nice. It just automatically assigns these two properties with whatever arguments get passed in when the constructor is called. Okay. We have a factory constructor, which is going to be called by our constructor. That's a topic for another day. I'm just changing things inside here to make them match. This is going to be the message property is going to get pulled from the message JSON key, and the status is going to get pulled from status, like so. And we're going to get rid of that last one right there. So far, so good. Okay. All right, that looks good. I think I need to change one more thing up here. This should be dog. All right, so I want to make my dog from my JSON. And this is a Flutter thing from JSON. All right, JSON.decode, response.body. If you've done any web programming, you know very well what response.body means. When you get JSON back, and you know what JSON is. So you understand, for example, JSON.parse, which would be used in JavaScript to get the contents of a network response. Okay, so everything looks okay. Moving down here, I've got my main function. It's great. I've got my stateful widget. All this is kind of boilerplate. You know what it does. Change that to dog. Okay. This I think I called way back when fetch dog instead of fetch album. And down here, this gets changed to dog as well. And now this part is interesting. This is where I actually print to the screen the text that's returned from the server. We used to be printing the title of an album, but we're not doing that anymore. Now we're going to print the message, which is going to be the URL from the dog API. All right. Again, there's some other fancy stuff going on in here that we won't get into right now. There seems to be a problem. Let's see. Type future album is not a subtype of type future dog. So somewhere I've not changed something. Here we go. Right there. Future dog. That doesn't look correct. Let's see. FutureBuilder dog. That needs to be, it's got to change somewhere else too. Let's see. Where is that? Right here. Future dog. And then this gets changed dog, like that. All right, so with everything updated appropriately, the app builds. And what we should see is the URL to an image of a dog. Just waiting a bit. Right, we have that circular progress indicator right here is this thing that we're returning right here. It might be appropriate at this time to just stop the app and build it again based on the last problem I had with it. Let's see. Let's try again. There it is. Okay. All right. So clearly it's a URL to a dog picture, but there's no picture yet. All right, let's try it again. Run the app again, and I should get a different picture, as you can see. All right. Great. So the last part of this is to actually implement the picture part. So now I'm going to go back and visit my Flutter Cookbook recipes, and we're going to find display images, which, as I said, is really, really easy. All you have to do is somewhere inside a body widget or a column widget or some layout widget, you just put in the image widget, you access its .network property, and then you pass to that, or I should say you call its .network method, and then you pass inside of that this particular URL, whatever you want, and that should go and follow that URL, get the image, and display it. Okay, so I think you know where I'm headed with this. Instead of printing out this bit here in a text widget, I'm just going to make that my image. I'm going to say network, and that's it. And then this snapshot.data.message will be that URL, because that's what I was showing here before. And it should take care of the rest from there. Let's see what happens. So I refreshed it. Yep, there it is. There's a picture of the first dog. Let's try it again. Okay, let's refresh. There's another one. All right, we'll go for 3. Clicking again. Great. Okay, so I hope you can appreciate how much has been accomplished with just a little bit of work with the help of these cookbook recipes that are up here. If you had to write this from scratch, it would be certainly possible. It would take a heck of a lot longer. I think some of this stuff with futures and future builders, and like what is snapshot in this context, and exactly why do I have that, and what does that do? There's a lot of asynchronous code that's here, and it's very interesting, but fortunately at this point you don't really have to know exactly what it's all doing, and I think I'll eventually post a follow-up that gets into the details of exactly what all of this means. In the meantime, though, you can go ahead and make any one of a number of apps that include pictures that are pulled dynamically from outside sources. There's obviously a wealth of information out there that you can pull. You've got the ability to put text here as well. You saw that in the original example with the album name, and now pictures. The internet is filled with servers that are there to give you information. Many are free if you can find them. When you try to do the same thing from a website, you often have to deal with something known as CORS, or cross-origin issues. I've mentioned that before. That has to do with the fact that browsers have a security feature where they'll throw up a red flag if you're receiving data from some source that's different than the page that you loaded into your browser. I don't know if that's going to be a problem here. I suspect it's not. So I suspect that the large body of servers that would cause CORS errors for web programming will not be a problem in this instance, but I haven't tried it enough to know. We're not working in a browser environment here at all, so I don't suspect that there would be that problem. But anyway, you can do a lot with it, and I'm going to post an assignment for those of you who are watching from my class, and your assignment is going to be to adapt this code so that there's a button that gets clicked, and each time you click the button, you fire off another request to the server, and that will then send you back another URL of a different dog, and then you'll follow that and post that new picture. So that instead of having to refresh the app each time to get your other picture, you're just literally going to click a button that's in the app itself. Okay, thanks for watching, and take care.